Hello, welcome to the closing celebration of the National Institutes for Historically Underserved Students, which will begin with a video retrospective of Think Tank's past.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day. I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, all we need is hope, and for that we have each other, and for that we have each other. And we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, I like the waves. We'll rise up, in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again. You, you, you.
started. And I promise you, even though we're separated by miles and time zones this morning and not able to see the smiles on each other's faces, today will be just as exciting. No university president can achieve any degree of success without the confidence and the leadership of the Board of Governors. And this morning, it is my honor to introduce WVU Parkersburg's incredibly supportive board chair, Donna Smith, to offer greetings. Donna?
Thank you, Dr. Gilmer, and good morning to all delegates and guests listening today. This is my third year participating in the think tank, and with each year, I have gained a greater understanding of the challenges faced by historically underserved students and the institutions whose mission it is to serve them. But I think nothing has brought that home more than the voices of the students themselves who participated in the two panel discussions held on Thursday, co sponsored by the National Issues Forums and the West Virginia Center for Civic Life. The first among West Virginia community college students addressing issues within our state, and the second among students from several member institutions across the country discussing racism and racial healing. If you did not have a chance to listen to the sessions then, I strongly suggest you visit WVUP's YouTube page and listen to them now. I promise you that hearing these students describe their economic concerns, their experiences with racism, and their hopes for our country will inform how you consider these issues in the future. I know for those committed to the mission of the Institutes, it must give you renewed conviction that the work you are doing is essential to these students' success and our progress as a nation. As the think tank will convene in Mississippi next year, I want to thank Dr. Gilmer for sharing the Institutes with West Virginia University at Parkersburg and our greater community these last 3 years. You have expanded our horizons and greatly enriched our experience by interacting with this National Assembly of educators, scholars, students, and supporters. We will miss you all next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna, and we hope you won't miss us because we hope you'll be there with
I
us.
might be able to.
And we will be back in West Virginia in the future. Dorothy McGill, Aaron Abeda, Lilius White, Latera Osborne Lampkin, David Matthew, Arnold Salazar, Harmony Vaughn, David Creel, Kristen Bundison, Shirlethia Franklin. These are just a few of the names of the people who dreamed the National Institutes for Historically Underserved Students into existence with me, along with a different group called out yesterday, and many others just as dear from coast to coast, too many to name. What started as a civil rights movement on the Salazar Ranch in Colorado has attracted delegates and supporters from more than 20 states and the District of Columbia and found new strength among the good people of West Virginia University Parkersburg. I could do nothing without them, and I hope you will indulge a proud president for a few moments as I call some names of people who have worked behind the scenes for a month or more to allow me to make this look easy. It isn't easy to transition a face to face event to a virtual one and navigate technology across 4 time zones, but they have made it happen in no particular order. West Virginia Chancellor Sarah Armstrong Tucker, Senta Gowdy, Billy Schutz, Michelle Young, Brady Whipke, David Creel, Rebecca Rhodes, Tom Lemon, Lori Ullman, Joseph Whipke, Olivia Reeder, Chad Crumbaker, Doug Anthony, Allison Wright, Austin Fields, Jackie Bennett, Steve Roberts, Jared Bailey, Alice Harris, Stephen Smith, Andrew Rokas, Sarah Weeks, and the two unsung heroes of this year's think tank after it went virtual, our IT lead, Bill Manier, and our moderator for the week, Tori Jackson. Just as David Creel has a flair for making our face to face events dramatic, I could not have done this week without Dr. Jackson. You all who know me well know that I'm off script right now, and you also know that I'm a face to face hugger and storyteller from way back. And moving virtual takes away pretty much all the natural talents that I was given. Fortunately, I was given something to more than compensate for that in the person of Dr. Tori Jackson. And I want Tori to be put on the spot and to unmute herself for a minute so you can meet her. And for you, for Tori, you just to say whatever might be on your heart this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Gilmer. It reminds me of that question I asked you quite a long time ago when you interviewed to be our president at WVU Parkersburg. And you were talking about humility. And so I asked you if you could tell me how to have a balance of humility and pride. And I think you have really represented that the whole time that you've been here. And I have a lot of pride today. I have pride in the students of West Virginia. I have pride in the students across this nation who have just been phenomenal in their ability to answer very difficult questions, to look to the future of our nation and how we can grow and become better. I'm also very proud, as I consider myself a work mom to many, many people here on campus, and my team has been phenomenal this week, and I really appreciate working at WVU Parkersburg. It truly feels like home, and I truly am WVU Parkersburg proud.
Thank you, Tori. No doubt I've accidentally overlooked someone very important, for which I apologize, but I could not leave these names unsaid. Humility requires any leader to joyfully acknowledge that he, she, or they amount to very little indeed without the quiet support of those around them. I also wish to acknowledge and thank the sponsors and partners collaborating with us this year. Our title sponsor, the Erickson Foundation, the Ross Foundation, First Energy, the Arts Collaborative of the Mid-Ohio Valley, the WVU at Parkersburg Foundation, Parkersburg Area Community Foundation, the West Virginia Center for Civic Life, the National Issues Forums, Judy Shosted Ritchie, and inspiring students from Tougaloo College, Alcorn State University, Santa Gleshka University, Adams State University, WVU Parkersburg, and all of the community colleges in the state of West Virginia. So far, we've shared the landscape and the customs of West Virginia and Colorado with our delegates. And if the pandemic allows, in 2021, we'll share the landscape and customs of Mississippi with a face-to-face think tank co-sponsored by WVUP, the Vicksburg Warren Public Schools, Alcorn State University, and Tougaloo College. Delegates will have the opportunity to tour one of this nation's exemplary public school districts and to spend time on two campuses distinguished historically Black colleges and universities. Between now and then, we will be piloting our tool to help colleges and universities assess their readiness to serve underserved students. We'll be making application for several promising grant opportunities and exploring the publication of a book of first-person narratives written by students and delegates telling our own poignant stories of passing and double consciousness. The future is bright, but for now, let us return to the present. My friend John Noltner, who enjoyed a successful career as photographer for National Geographic, now travels to every corner of this nation with a piece of my mind, the organization he founded to tell the stories of American heroes and rank and file Americans finding a way to coexist in extraordinary times. John has spent a month with us here in the Mid-Ohio Valley to document our own local stories of resilience, which will now become part of the fabric of his national and international narrative of peace. It is my pleasure to introduce and turn the program over to my friend, John Noltner.
Thank you, Dr. Gilmer. And it's good to be back here with you. I'm sitting 2 offices away from you, socially distanced here at WVUP. And good morning to everybody else. I'm glad to be here with you for the think tank for the National Institute for Historically Underserved Students. Like Dr. Gilmer said, for the past month, I've been doing an artist residency here in Parkersburg in the Mid-Ohio Valley, and I'm excited to talk with you about that today. I want to share with you some of the background of this project called A Piece of My Mind. But then I definitely want to share with you some of the rich stories that we gathered here over the last few weeks in the Mid-Ohio Valley. So I'm going to quickly share my screen for just a moment. You may get a glimpse at my horrifically disorganized desktop here. We'll try to scoot right by that. And I will fire this up so that we can have our conversation. There we go. I think we're good, right? So, um, so I want to tell you about this project called A Piece of My Mind. But first, let me just begin by saying, it's been a week, right? For all of us in our country. And it's been a year. It's been quite a year for all of us here. I started this project 12 years ago because I was concerned about the polarized voices in the world. I was concerned about all the ways we can divide one another. And I wanted to use my photography and storytelling instead to recall how we're connected. So that was more than a decade ago. And maybe as I look at the world around us now, I find that maybe I'm not doing my job well enough, or or maybe I find that there's just a lot of work to do in the world as we figure out how to live better together. And so this morning, I'm glad to be sitting with you all, who I know are people who believe that something better is possible, who are people who are doing that work every day. And when it feels like you're alone, when it feels like the world is challenging, it's good to surround yourself with others who believe that something better is possible so that we can rise up together. So this morning, I want to invite you to take a deep breath and to join me as we try to remember that there is beauty and wisdom that's all around us if we take the time to see it and if we take the time to hear it. It wasn't that long ago I was in Memphis and I was reminded of Dr. King's notion of beloved community, this idea that we could mature into a world that sees beyond prejudice and discrimination, that our circles of compassion could expand to include all people. And of course, you don't have to look very far to realize that we struggle with that process. But to me, beloved community is a choice. We have an opportunity to create beloved community. We have an opportunity to expand beloved community. So I've spent my career as a freelance photographer, and I've shot for national magazines and Fortune 500 companies. I've had the good fortune of producing travel stories across the United States and around the world. And through that process, I've come to realize that it's my job to find beauty in unexpected places, that people actually hire me to find good where others might struggle to see it. Now, that doesn't mean that we ignore the challenges that are in front of us. The world is filled with challenges, and I think it's important that we address those challenges honestly and directly. I also think that it's important that we approach those challenges with a grace and a hope and the belief that something better is possible. So as a freelance photographer, you're constantly making choices about the jobs that you'll accept in the world. Does this square up with my worldview? Does it support ideas I believe in? Does it justify being away from my family for a certain length of time? And at our house, we've embraced this saying that you might be familiar with, which is some jobs feed the belly and some jobs feed the soul. So when you're really lucky, your job can do both. Now, back about 10 years ago, when I started this project, there were two things going on in my life. And the first I alluded to already. I was frustrated with the quality of our national dialogue. I was concerned about all the things that ask us to look at what can separate us, whether it's religion, race, ethnicity, class, gender, you name it. If you choose to go through life dividing, you've got all sorts of tools at your disposal. But I wondered if there was something I could do with my photography and my storytelling instead to remember what connects us. So that was the first thing that was going on a decade ago. The second thing is I like to say the economy handed me some free time, if you know what I mean. The world of freelance photography was hit hard by the recession. My workload dropped quickly and dramatically. And if I was a better business person, I probably would have used that time to look for new clients. But not everything we do in life is measured in dollars and cents. There are other ways that we can measure our success. And like I said, my soul was getting hungry. And this is how I chose to feed it. I started playing around with this idea of peace. You know, and here's the interesting thing about peace. We say that we want it, but we're not always good at getting it. And so you might have a high school student who flashes the peace sign while they walk down the hall, and then they'll form into cliques and they'll bully their own classmates. You might have a peace activist on the street with a sign that says, give peace a chance, but they can't get along with their immediate family members. You'll have two countries that claim they want to find a peaceful resolution to a conflict, but they won't agree on the shape of the negotiating table to sit at. And at my church, way up in Minnesota, where I'm from, it's called, ironically, Peace Lutheran Church. You'll have people who nod up and down on Sunday morning while they listen to the story of the Good Samaritan, story about helping somebody in need, no matter who it is. And Monday, they'll walk right by someone in need like it's not their problem. So there's a disconnect between what we say we value and how we live our day-to-day lives. And I wanted to explore that notion a little bit. And I started working with this question: what does peace mean to you? And on the surface, that's a really simple question, but it quickly gets at the core of who we are as human beings and what we value as a society. It opens the door to all sorts of interesting conversations about race and gender and national policy and international priorities. More than anything else, when you sit down and you ask people this question, it opens the door to conversations for them to talk about what's close to their heart. And once we established the question, the process became remarkably simple. We listened. That's it. You know, we just sat down with people from all different backgrounds, and we created a space to intentionally listen. Now, I've heard it said that we learn how to talk in the first 2 years of our lives, and we spend the rest of our lives learning how to listen, and we just never quite get that right. So we'll listen in order to refute or rebut. We'll listen to correct, coerce, or convince somebody of our point of view. But the simple act of listening, just to understand, well, that's rare. And imagine if we could do a little bit more of that in our lives. So as I started listening, I started hearing these stories from people like Jarrell Wilson, who began his interview by saying, I'm Black, gay, Christian, and I live in the South. He said, by all means, you might think that I'd be miserable, but in fact, he said, I see beauty everywhere. And I met people like Panina Bowman in Atlanta, Georgia. And Panina told a story about growing up as a child in World War II Europe. And she said one day soldiers showed up at their door and they said, you've got 15 minutes to pack your bags and then you have to go. Well, they didn't know where they were going to go, but they wound up going to Auschwitz. So 42 members of Panina's family died at Auschwitz. And she talked about how difficult that entire process was, how difficult it was to find anything that resembled peace there. But she said she also made a decision when she was there not to hate, because Panina said that hate is a really powerful weapon and it's intended to destroy somebody else, but in fact, it circles back and it destroys you instead. And I met people like Dan Gallagher in Missoula, Montana. And Dan is a Vietnam War veteran and he was proud of his service. He went overseas to do his duty as a citizen, and he was under the impression when he came back, he'd be welcomed home as a hero. Well, we all know that's not really the way it went. And when he came back on the bus, pulled up into Missoula, he saw protesters outside, and one was holding a sign that said he was a baby killer. When he walked off the bus, this young woman spit on him. And Dan said it derailed him for years. And you know, all he wanted was to come home and restart his life and buy a house and get a college degree and get married, go on living. But instead it derailed him, and he said it took him years to get back on his feet. And Dan said that they never really had a chance to talk peace with the peace people because everybody was too busy yelling at one another. Well, I came to realize that these stories are all around us. Again, if we take the time to see them, if we take the time to hear them. And eventually, this project led me on a 40,000-mile road trip across the country, going places where I'd never been, meeting people who I'd never met, and encountering ideas that I'd never considered before. I met people like Angela Bates in a little town called Nicodemus, Kansas. And Nicodemus was settled by freed slaves after the Civil War, and there used to be a lot of towns like this west of the Mississippi. As far as I understand, Nicodemus is the only one that still exists west of the Mississippi. And everybody who still lives there is a direct descendant of the freed slaves that settled the place. And Angela talks about, you know, her pride in that town of Nicodemus. She was proud of her heritage. She said she felt like she was a descendant of people with great courage and faith in God and great determination. And she was proud, and everybody there was proud of it. And so they decided that they would talk to the National Park Service and see if they could honor that in some way. And finally, after a number of years, the Park Service agreed, and they built this beautiful interpretive center that speaks to the history of this place settled by freed slaves. And here's where we get tone deaf as a society, as individuals. They staffed that museum with all white people. It doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense in the world. And Angela talked about how frustrating this was, but she realized, she said that she had a choice about how she was going to respond to the world around her. And so Angela decided that she was going to work with some of the other town folks, and they were going to open their own museum so that they could talk about their own history. Because to Angela's thought, we're never going to understand where it is we're going if we don't also understand where it is we've been. So there's a little bit of whimsy to this project. And when I got done interviewing Angela, I said, hey, what are the chances that we can get everybody in the town together for a town portrait? She said, well, I'll start making phone calls. You'll probably get everybody except for my dad because he's kind of crabby. But there he is too, just to the right of the sign with that dark blue baseball cap. So that is the whole town of Nicodemus, Kansas. 16 souls farming wheat and milo on the Kansas prairie, all direct descendants of the freed slaves that settled the place. Well, if you look closely, it's 16 people in that one chihuahua there in Nicodemus, Kansas. So I got to go places I'd always wanted to be as well. I got to meet Kenny Terrio, who's a third-generation Cajun shrimper in Chauvin, Louisiana. I'd always loved those shrimp boats as a photographer with those nets that hang out to the side. And so I thought if I talked to a shrimp captain, maybe I could also get to photograph one of those shrimp boats. So sometimes I have to ask myself, if I'm trying to talk about peace, why do I want to connect with a shrimp fisherman? And I asked Kenny, I said, what's it like to be a shrimp fisherman? And he said, well, you go out there and you find the shrimp and then you catch them. I thought, okay, well, that makes sense to me. But he went on and he said, when he was growing up, if somebody needed a shrimp boat, well, they would all get together and they'd build him a boat. If somebody else needed a boat, well, they'd all get together and they'd build him a boat. And pretty soon in that community, everybody wound up with a boat, and that worked out pretty good. So this notion of making sure everybody has the resources that they need in order to thrive, making sure everybody has access to the tools in order to be self-sufficient, that absolutely is related to my understanding of peace. So I got done interviewing Kenny and he said, well, where are you staying tonight? And I responded the way I always do. And I said, well, I have no idea. What do you suggest? Because I'm hopeful and because I'm cheap. And Kenny said, well, I got a burnt out RV in the backyard if you want to stay there. And I said, well, that sounds pretty good to me. And he said, in the morning, we'll go out looking for alligators. And I said, that sounds real good to me. And he said, if you can stick around one more day, he said, shrimping season starts and you can come out on the Gulf with me. And I said, yeah, Kenny, that sounds great to me. So I not only got to see those shrimp boats, I got to ride on them out in the Gulf of Mexico. We went out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and we came back at 8 o'clock in the morning. And in the process, we caught 1,200 pounds of shrimp, and I have not eaten a shrimp since. But I never ate a shrimp before, so it wasn't a sacrifice. So again, I came to realize that these stories are all around us. These little bits of wisdom, these little insights as to how we can live better together if we take the time to hear them, if we take the time to see them. And eventually I realized that I wanted to share these stories. You know, there's no reason this should have been me to work on this project. I wasn't an expert in matters of peace. I didn't have an advanced degree. I had no secret answers. And if you asked my family, you probably figure out pretty quick that I got all my own problems. You know, I'm not an expert in matters of peace, but just because we know we're going to struggle doesn't mean we should stop trying. You know, so I wanted to use these stories to encourage conversations, to get people to think about new ideas, to challenge expectations and find new ways of living better together. So we gathered these stories into a book. We gathered these stories into an exhibit. We've got 4 traveling exhibits, and this one has been in Parkersburg for the last few weeks. But then we wanted to do something a little bit more. We wanted to gather local stories, to make this whole process a little bit more interactive. So we started setting up these studios to invite people to participate in the conversation. And we'll change that question depending on where we go. And I want to share a few examples with you of that. We asked the people to share a 25-word response. We do a black and white portrait, and we combine their words and their images. And for instance, I guess it was last year, I was up at Cornell University, and we asked students, what kind of world do you want to live in? And I'll just share a couple of these responses here. I want to live in a world that allows people to paint their self-portrait without dictating the brush strokes. You know, some of these people get a little poetic in the process. I want to live in a world where freedom isn't something that needs to be earned. So we found that when we create a space that lets people feel like they're being heard, they'll share profound things. I've done a lot of work with veterans, and I spent some time with an organization called Project Sanctuary that helps reintegrate veterans into community life after they've returned from combat. And this organization does a lot of work around PTSD and suicide prevention. And we simply asked the people there, what have you learned? And Joe says, if suicide seems like the only answer, then you're asking the wrong question. I've learned to enjoy life again. And I'll tell you, when I went into this project with Project Sanctuary, Joe, well, he's quite a bit taller than me, and he's quite a bit bigger than me. And he came right up here in front of my face and he said, I don't know what sort of garbage you're trying to do. That wasn't the exact language he used with your art, but I don't want anything to do with it. And I said, that's okay. I'm here if you change your mind. And at the end of the week, Joe showed up in the door of our studio and he decided to share this story. And when I reflected this back to the community, Joe came up afterwards and gave me a bear hug that I thought was going to crush me. And he said, thank you for taking the time to hear our stories. I think one of the most powerful things we can do for people in the world is to say that I see you and I hear you and you matter. A couple other stories from that series. Bonnie says Brian's suicide didn't stop his pain. It just gave a piece of it to everyone who knew and loved him. Tell your stories. You must relate the pain of what happened to you. You must release the pain of what happened to you. You know, again, to be able to say to people, I hear you, I see you, and you matter is a powerful process. You know, I come from Minneapolis. My wife and I just sold our home there, and we're traveling now full time. But normally I would have been on the road about 180 days a year. But this summer, of course, because of COVID, I was idle at home like so many other people. I happen to live 11.6 miles south of the intersection of 38th and Chicago in Minneapolis, where George Floyd was killed on Memorial Day weekend. So I went up to that space and I went up there with one of my little studio lights. We set up a really informal studio on the side of the road, on the sidewalk at that intersection. And again, as an act of listening, as an act of bearing witness and just being present with others, we simply asked people, what do you want to say? And over the course of that week, after it happened, we had 50 people respond. And I just want to share a few of those stories with you here. I don't care who you are or what you look like. You don't have the right to hurt anybody. I have a black son. Now he's not a threat, but soon he'll become a man, and I fear for his life. A black mother's nightmare. What you tolerate today becomes commonplace tomorrow. To create a brighter future, we must take a stand today. Am I next? People of color are sick and tired of being sick and tired. We're not asking for justice anymore. We're demanding it. And we're not asking for equality anymore. We're demanding it. I like his t-shirt. Yes, I am mixed. With black, unapologetically black, proud black, and black again. So what we found in this process, and again, we'll go anywhere that there's a story to tell. We will go anywhere where people want to share what's on their hearts. And what we found is that when we sit down with people, when we open up this space, that we create a body of work that can not only help individuals articulate their thoughts, their mission, vision, and values in the world, but it can help a community to see itself and its peers in new ways. And so here in the Mid-Ohio Valley, for the last several weeks, we've had a residency, and I want to thank all the sponsors that show up on that sign, all the folks who had us here and believed that photography and storytelling and art can create positive change in the world. And so normally I'll come into a place and I'll be there for a few days, I'll be there for a week or so. There's a richness to sitting in a place for a month and being able to hear these stories. And of course, we have all been through some stuff this year, what between the election, between COVID, between figuring out how to do live events as virtual events. We have had plenty of opportunities to rise up and find new strength. And so here in the Mid-Ohio Valley, we wanted to ask people, when have you found strength in the midst of struggle? And let me look here real quick. Okay, I'm going to come back here. And Jared, we're just about to share some of these stories, but I want to tell you that in this week, we had over 109 people who came into our studio. And this is my first physical studio engagement since COVID. And so we found socially distanced and safe ways to do this. And we kept everybody, 10 feet apart. And I wore my mask all the time. We had the people who participated remove their masks once we were 10 feet apart, just for long enough to do the picture. And we had over 100 people come in and share their stories. And what I want to do now is share. We can't share all 109 of them because we would be here for the next half hour looking at a video. But I've got a selection of about 30 of them. And I want to invite you to use this next 7 minutes as a reflection, as a meditation of sorts, and see and hear some of the reflections that people have shared about where they found strength in the midst of struggle. To think about that question for yourself, about where you found strength in the midst of struggle. And so I think as we do this, I think I need to unshare my screen. And I think Jared is going to come in and share his screen, and we can go ahead and play that video. Give me just a minute here to reshare my screen. Those are good things. Those are some powerful stories out of the Mid Ohio Valley. And when I look at those stories, I see stories of faith, and I see stories of family. I see commitment to others around us, and I see a determination not to quit. You know, and to me, this is the beloved community that Dr. King talked about. And we can find it if we look for it. We can find it if we listen for it. And we can fan the flame and turn that spark of beloved community into a flame. So we got all of those stories, and we were not willing to just stop there. So we took those stories, and 109 of them, and we printed them out here at WVUP. Some of them as big as 30 by 45. And we took them all up and down Market Street downtown in Parkersburg, and we posted them in the storefront windows so that as people walk by, they can see themselves and they can see their peers in new ways. Had a little fun playing with the reflections, doing a selfie on that one. But we put them all up and down the street so that people can see one another. There's a familiar face on the top, Dr. Gilmer, and um, and we decided not to stop there. And the last two nights, we also projected these images really large on the side of the historic Smoot Theater downtown. And so for an hour and a half each evening, we had socially distanced groups that were gathered to look at the stories. And I could hear really interesting conversations going on as people were viewing the stories to celebrate themselves and celebrate the community around them. And for me, this is the real magic of this project is to be able to look at where we found success. Right? It becomes really easy to get lost in the struggle, but I also believe that we have to look for where we've succeeded, and we have to hold up those examples. We have to amplify those examples as our way for how to move forward. And I know that these stories exist all around the country. And so my wife, this is the first stop on a long journey for this new project, A Piece of My Mind. My wife and I sold our house a month ago, and we've got ourselves a little mobile trailer now, and we're crossing the country to gather these stories of hope and courage and transformation and the belief that something better is possible. And if you'd like to follow that journey at all, I'd encourage you to follow us on social media, see some of the stories that we encounter. You know, as we close here today, I just want to call back to another one of Dr. King's sayings that I'm really fond of, which is that, you know, darkness can't drive out darkness, but only light can do that. And hatred can't drive out hatred, only love can do that. And I'm more and more convinced as we go around the country. I'm more and more convinced as I see the work that you all are doing uh, with the institutes and in your own communities, that you and I, that we are that love, and that you and I, we are that light, and we got a lot of work to do. Thank you for having me today, Dr. Gilmer. Have a good day, everybody.
Wow. Thank you, John, so much for being here. You know, people who know me know that I respect every religion equally and that I respect people who don't have any religion at all. But this takes me all the way back to where I started. And what I feel compelled to say is what I said so many times and heard so many times in my childhood. Let the church say amen. That's pretty much all I can say after what you just shared with us. We thank you and Karen so much for being here. We're honored to be the first step on your next journey, and we wait for the day that you will come back to us with your true inspiration. I also want to tell the local community that those photos on Market Street will be up for another week if you want to drive by or walk by and see them. And then Dr. Jackson will find a way to share the whole 22-minute video of all 109 photos with the community as well. So this is ours to keep. We get to keep a piece of my mind right here in the Mid Ohio Valley. Now we move to another very special time in our program, the presentation of the 2020 Generations Award. The Generations Award is presented annually by the National Institutes to multiple generations of the same family, advancing the work of social justice. Past recipients include the family of the Honorable Constance Slaughter Harvey Esquire, an icon of the civil rights movement, recently selected as one of USA Today's important women in history. The family of Dr. Lionel Bordeaux, president of Santa Glesca University and an inaugural member of the National Native American Hall of Fame, and the family of Anna Maria Pacheco, the matriarch of a prominent Colorado family who has advocated for educational attainment for Latinx and all students. Today, we add one more equally deserving family to this auspicious list. We have a video retrospective of their lives together, and when it's finished, then joining me to present the honor will be Cinta Gowdy, Dean of the Center for Civic Engagement at WVU Parkersburg and a lifetime friend of one of the recipients, after which the recipients will offer their response. Let's please have the video, and then Dean Gowdy, will you please make the presentation?
There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Yes, there's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. May we know that together. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
All in my room, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my room, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my room, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine,
Let it shine, let it shine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it
Let it shine,
shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let
I'll let it shine.
this little light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light, this a little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. this little light, this light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, shine, shine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Bravo.
That was amazing. What a great video, and how much fun it was to see the Donato Sop family grow together and love together, laugh together. It's a real delight for me to know them. I have known Jeff since we were children together, and things don't look as if they have changed much, because when we were growing up together, it was all about a lot of laughing and a lot of fun, and a little just a little devilment, nothing serious, just having fun with the people around us. And we have great memories of being together when we were children. What was a pleasure for me was to follow Jeff's career over the years as I was able. He moved to California away from Parkersburg, but we traveled in some of the same circles, and from time to time I would hear a little bit about what he was doing. His parents went to the same church that my parents went to, so I get pieces of information about them. But when Facebook came on the scene, and I learned about Jeff's family and the wonderful Sino, who joined in marriage with Jeff, and what an incredible story that Sino has as an immigrant to this country. And then the thing that was even more thrilling was when Helena joined the family. Family is foundational to all of us. And while the Generation Award has in the past gone to families with long histories, generations of individuals who've been advocates and long time supporters of the issues that are critical to our communities, I was thrilled when the Institute selected the Donata Sapp family, because what I see when I look at them, I look at a group of people who have chosen very specifically to create a family, and what they represent and what they do in the way that they live and work and love is to clearly establish what family is. Family is what you decide it will be. And they are the epitome of the family, not just of today, but they have set us all on a very clear path and very understanding way of knowing that this is family. Family is love. Family is choice. Family is working together. Family is forever. And family makes a difference. I am pleased and delighted to join with Dr. Gilmer and the National Institutes today to present this award. And it may be a little hard to read. Let me get the light just right. It's the 2020 Generations Award. It's given to the Donata Sapp family. And what I particularly like about it, and why I believe they are so appropriate, and I'm so thrilled and delighted that they are this year's recipients, it says, because of you, together we can fly. Thank you for being yourselves. Thank you for showing us what family can do. And thank you for the advocacy that you do just in the way you live and the things that you do and the way that you communicate, inspire, and show us what love can do right here in our country and our beloved community, which is so cool, the way John Knowlner was talking about beloved community. and you are beloved community with us, and you establish beloved community for the world. Thank you. Helena Sapp, Donata Sapp has offered to speak for her family. So Helena, I look forward to hearing from you. It's so beautiful to see you. And you too, Jeff and Sino, I know. But Helena sort of takes our hearts, as do you. Helena?
Thank you. My dad, Pop, and I want to thank you for this wonderful award recognizing our family. It's true, we do want equity and justice for all. Long before I was born, my great grandparents on my dad's side were immigrant coal miners in West Virginia. I have grown up with the stories of John Lewis and the Union Wars. My dad and Papa kept those stories alive for me by talking about their flight attendant and teacher unions. Because of their stories, I'm interested in the rights of farm workers, especially farm worker women. And I'm interested in the rights of hotel workers, especially that women are safe from men touching them without their permission. Because of my papa, I have grown up with stories of how the Philippines were colonized by Spain and how that led to things like colorism and elitism. My dad and papa keep me informed about colorism today in the conversations we have about race. I'm 11 years old and I already know about light and dark skin biases. I know about anti-Blackness. I also know about Black pride and the Black is Beautiful movement. Black Lives Matter. Because my two dads grew up in different economic situations, I knew early in my life about classism and that some people get special treatment because they have more money than others. I know that money doesn't make you special or more important. It makes you more accountable. My dad's grandparents were immigrants, and all of my papa's family are immigrants. My papa immigrated here from the Philippines when he was 12 years old, 1 year older than I am now. My dad and papa keep these conversations going in our home, and we respect and honor the indigenous land we find ourselves on today. And because I grew up with two dads, I knew very early in my life about the concept of family of choice. We will choose who will be in our family by the way you treat us. We are a family created through the wonder of adoption, and we honor my birth mother for choosing the three of us to be a family. We are a gay, multiracial family created through adoption. Again, my dad, Papa, and I want to thank you for this wonderful award recognizing our family. I have been raised with certain values. We refer to these as our Donato Sapp family values, and I thought I would share our values with you today because I think they are why you want to honor us. We have 7 values we live by, although we hope to add more in the future. Our first value is to be kind. You might think that is simple, but it isn't. You have to name your values or else they don't work. You have to leave the house and remind each other every day to be kind because it is easy to forget once you go out into the world. Be kind when others are not kind. Be kind when you get mad. And be kind when you're not sure what to do. Just be kind. And don't forget to be kind to yourself. We are often really mean to ourselves first, and that's why we don't want to be kind to anyone else either. Always, always be kind to yourself. Our second value is to be bold. Being bold means to think outside the box It means to ask and not care that you get a yes answer. It means to do the thing that most people would be too shy to do. I will warn you that you'll get more no answers, but being bold means that you don't care about the no answers. Sometimes, more times than you will realize, people will say yes, and then you can be surprised. Be bold. Ask, go for it, be bold, be bold, be bold. Our third family value is to do more rather than less. That goes for everything. Do more homework, do more chores, do more kindness, do more being bold, do more love, do more compliments, do more rather than less. Our fourth family value is that you don't have to be perfect and failure is okay. Don't get us wrong. You're not seeking failure. We're just not afraid of it either. Failure is a part of life and a part of learning. It's just no big deal, so don't let it freak you out. Our fifth family value is to never say anything negative about homework. Now you can probably guess that I was told this one and didn't have a choice in the matter. Let's face it, homework is hard and we don't always like to do it. Well, this is one that you're going to have to trust me on because I don't quite understand it yet either. I think what it means is that it is a privilege to learn and that education is important. Our sixth Donato Sap family value is to show up. Showing up is more than half the battle. All three of us, for instance, are involved in martial arts. We show up 6 days a week. You just decide you're going to show up, and then once you're there, you love it, and you are glad you did show up. Show up. Show up for others. Show up for yourself. Show up for justice and equity. Show up for different groups, not just your own. Show up for others. Just show up. Our last family value is very important and very dear to us. For as long as I've been alive, I've never once heard a negative thing in my home about my body. We are not allowed to say anything about anyone's body unless it is to tell them that they are beautiful and perfect. It is one of our most strict values. We are not allowed to speak negatively about our own bodies either. And if we forget and say a mean thing to ourselves, we go to the bathroom mirror, we look ourselves in the eyes, and we say, I'm sorry, body. I love you, body. And then we go and love ourselves better. And loving ourselves better helps us love each other better. These are the 7 Donato Sap family values. Our family also wants to say a couple of other things too. Love science. Dig deep into history. Read and love literature and books. Make art and love artists. Sing and learn an instrument. Be kind. Be bold. Make peace. Build bridges. Do more. Love homework. Show up. Love your body. Oh, and one last thing. Just so you know, over the last few years, those of you involved in the think tank have become our family as well, our family of choice. And because you are our family too, then this award is really for all of us that do the work of justice and equity every single day. Thank you again for honoring my family.
Thank you, Helena, and thank you, Jeff Encino. And boy, we are so proud to be a part of your family. Thank you very, very much. Dr.
Yes,
Gilmer?
thank you, dear Helena. You know a lot. I wish I knew half of what you know at your age. And we thank your fathers Sino and Jeff, it's been said that there will come a time when a little child will lead us. And I don't know about the rest of you, but if that child can be anything like Helena Donato Sapp, I say sign me up because her little light is shining. Let's pause wherever we are and give this family a round of applause. You may not hear the applause, my family in California, but it's coming just the same. As we draw this year's think tank bittersweetly to a close and look forward to next year, I think, as I often do, of the legacy of a woman I never had the pleasure to meet, but who inspires me more than most, Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. Our theme is Rise Up Again, and she rose up from the cotton fields of Mississippi to demand the respect of a nation. She was rightly filled with both defiance and hope. She famously said, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. No doubt that is how many of our historically underserved students often feel, even as we advocate for them. But she also sang a simple song. Wherever you are, silently or out loud, to whomever is listening, will you get ready to join me in singing one verse of this song? I started singing it without any premeditation at our first think tank in Colorado. And my sister from a different mother, Constance Slaughter Harvey, got up from her chair and came up and took my hand and started singing it with me. And then before we knew it, everybody in the room was singing this song. And sweet dear Helena has just given me permission to sing. So most of you know it as well as I do. Sing it with me if you know it. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And may we all continue, wherever we are, to let our little light shine, because it is possible that our single light is the only beacon that someone who desperately needs hope will be able to see today. Thank you all for being with us today, and I look forward to being with all of you again very soon. Thank you.